It's Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. Could we actually see passage of the SAVE Act in the Senate? A reminder that most people aren't paying attention, and a Democrat candidate proudly blasphemes. Next on the AM Update. President Trump responded to the ongoing blow-up regarding the latest batch of the Epstein files, saying on Truth Social yesterday, quote, "Not only wasn't I friendly with Jeffrey Epstein, but based on information that has just been released by the Department of Justice, Epstein and a sleazebag lying author named Michael Wolff conspired in order to damage me and or my presidency. So much for the radical left's hope against hope, some of whom I'll be suing. Additionally, unlike so many people that like to talk trash, I never went to the infested Epstein Island, but almost all of these crooked Democrats and their donors did. Okay, why wasn't this released in full? Why didn't you push for this a year ago? That's the natural question to ask. Also, an outcrop, we think, of this latest batch of Epstein files. Former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have agreed to testify in the House Oversight Committee's Jeffrey Epstein investigation after lawmakers moved towards holding them in criminal contempt of Congress. The committee said in a post on X that the Clintons were, quote, trying to dodge contempt by requesting special treatment, adding that the Clintons are not above the law. Angel Urania, Deputy Chief of Staff to Bill Clinton, confirmed in the post on X that both the Clintons will appear before the panel. The committee is examining what the Clintons may have known about Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, including scrutiny of Hillary Clinton's role overseeing U.S. efforts to combat international sex trafficking while serving as Secretary of State. So, the Republicans, to their credit in the House, they decided after the Clintons ignored their subpoena, okay, well, fair's fair. You're going to be held in contempt if you don't come before this panel. Over in the Senate, could we actually see passage of the SAVE Act over there? John Thune recently had this to say about what the chances are of that bill actually becoming law. It's already been passed in the House.
Repeatedly urged the passing the SAVE Act as well as many MAGA Republicans. What is the holdup in the Senate? Why hasn't that been brought to the floor for a vote? And what's your stance on requiring proof of citizenship to vote in elections?
Well, I'm for that. I've co-sponsored the SAVE Act in the past. I think my understanding is that they are still modifying the bill. It includes right now a requirement that you be a citizen to register to vote, but it doesn't include a requirement that to vote you be a resident. So in other words, if you're going to have what we call voter ID or photo ID when somebody goes into the ballot box to vote, that's not currently covered in the bill. So that's being fixed and addressed, and I think the new bill that comes out hopefully will deal with that. But I mean, at some point we'll have that vote. I'm for it. I think most of our colleagues in the Senate are, and I don't, it hasn't had consideration in the relevant committee yet, but I know there's a high level of interest among our members in getting a vote on SAVE Act.
There's Senate Majority Leader John Thune a few days ago saying he fully expects the SAVE Act to make its way to the floor of the Senate. Meanwhile, there was some flurry of rumors and innuendo yesterday. Representative Anna Paulina Luna of Florida says that John Thune is moving towards nuking the zombie filibuster to pass the SAVE Act. In exchange, Luna and Representative Tim Burchett are backing the funding bill advancing. A quote-unquote standing filibuster is what's being rumored. Never heard of that. Apparently means 50 votes are needed after senators finish debate. If you wanted to force a 60-vote requirement, typically, senators actually had to show up and debate until they couldn't any longer. The zombie filibuster means that nobody really has to show up. The threat alone of a filibuster means that it's dead. So maybe there's some life to the SAVE Act in the Senate after all. We'll hear from another senator later on. And spoiler alert, I don't have my hopes up. New polling shows midterm election voters are overwhelmingly still supportive of mass deportations and oppose Democrat efforts to defund or abolish immigration and customs enforcements. According to Signal Research, that was one of President Trump's top pollsters, but a legit pollster in the 2024 cycle, support for deporting illegals is at 61%. 54% still support using ICE to deport illegals, even after the massive PSYOP campaign to poison the well when it comes to immigration and customs enforcement. By the way, I would like a poll of any and every one of these commie street orcs in Minnesota right now, just go up to each one of them. Hey, what does ICE actually stand for? Can you tell me? I'd like to see that poll. And 58%, according to Signal, oppose shutting the government down to defund ICE. Also, on the topic of people just really aren't paying attention. Why do I say that? It's because despite all of the breathless headlines, despite all of the kerfuffles we've seen, especially centered around Minneapolis, it doesn't seem to have been shaping public policy. It doesn't seem to have been shaping public perception as much as you might think, as much as maybe those who are perpetuating such narratives would like you to believe. Trump's highest approval is on responding to the anti-ICE protests, quote unquote, in Minneapolis. 51%. An actual majority approve of his actions there. That's even above immigration in and of itself and how Trump is faring on immigration. It has him underwater on immigration overall at 45 to 51. 45 approve, 51% disapprove. He's even above that in his response to Minneapolis, and that's according to a Harvard-Harris poll as well. So just thought I'd throw that out there. A D.C.-based federal judge by the name of Anna Reyes, a Biden appointee, has blocked the Department of Homeland Security from ending temporary protected status for 350,000 plus Haitians in the U.S. whose legal status was set to expire today on the 3rd, which would have opened them up to deportation and loss of their work authorizations. Judge Reyes says DHS Secretary Kristi Noem doesn't have the law or facts on her side and writes that it is substantially likely that Noem has hostility towards non-white immigrants. Yes, she wrote this. This federal judge actually wrote this. It's really a great deal, isn't it? Temporary protected status. Some rando Democrat president can just cook up a new term, a new legal status, temporary protected status. And some Democrat-appointed judge in the 666th District of Babylon can just say, no, it's constitutional because I say so, into perpetuity. Congress be damned. That's where we live now. Speaking of where I live, this happened at a Methodist church, St. Paul's Methodist Church in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, over the weekend. What you are hearing is part of footage from a training that this church in Cedar Rapids, St. Paul's United Methodist Church in Cedar Rapids, a training that they did for hundreds of people, showing them how to illegally impede federal immigration law enforcement. It shows this video shows people blowing whistles, somebody pretending to be an ICE agent dressed up in a mask, coming to go get somebody who has darker colored skin. And all of these individuals start blowing their whistles, their rape whistles. They start taking their phones out and filming the pretend officer as he leads this person away. And in one frame of the video, in one section of the video, I should say, it can be seen these individuals at the church are actually blocking the pretend police officer, which is, of course, if they did that in real life, that would be illegal. Iowa Representative Ashley Hinson, this is her district, said, quote, I'm deeply disturbed by the recent events in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where Ashuka Mai Vaz is hosting so-called legal observer trainings that encourage interference with law enforcement operations. After 4 years of Biden's open borders, our law enforcement is working to remove criminals from our streets, and masquerading as a nonprofit to undermine that effort raises serious questions about retaining 501c3 tax-exempt status. We'll see. It's all talk until, they do something. Speaking of all talk, James Tallarico, I think that's how you say his name. He's running for U.S. Senate in the state of Texas. He joined Joe Rogan to blaspheme.
But I say all this in context of abortion because before God comes over Mary and we have the incarnation, God asks for Mary's consent, which is remarkable. I mean, go back and read this in Luke. I mean, the angel comes down and asks Mary if this is something she wants to do. And she says, if it is God's will, let it be done. Let it be. Let it happen. So to me, that is an affirmation in one of our most central stories that creation has to be done with consent. You cannot force someone to create. Creation is one of the most sacred acts that we engage in as human beings. But that has to be done with consent. It has to be done with freedom. And And to me, that is absolutely consistent with the ministry and life and death of Jesus. And so that's how I come down on that side of the issue.
First of all, I think your soul is in danger. Second of all, that's at least the way you've couched it. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. If you're consenting to sex, you're consenting to procreation, and you're consenting to becoming a mother or a father. That's just how this works. It's worked this way for thousands upon thousands of years of human history. And of all of the analogies that you pulled out of a really dark, stinky place to try to twist scripture to fit your worldview, you tried the virgin birth of Jesus as an example of consent, meaning that you think that Jesus should have been aborted if Mary had said so. That's James Tallarico, U.S. Senate candidate in Texas, of course, Democrat. When we come back, a few interesting news stories, including more commentary from a senator on the SAVE Act and its fate in the Senate. That's coming up next. The 84-year-old mother of Today star Savannah Guthrie is missing. Arizona officials say they are investigating her disappearance as a kidnapping. The Pima County Sheriff's Department in southern Arizona received a 911 call reporting Nancy Guthrie was missing from her home outside Tucson around local time on Sunday, February 1st. The following day, during the afternoon on Monday, February 2nd, law enforcement confirmed investigators believed Nancy Guthrie was taken from the home. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos said that Nancy Guthrie didn't just walk out of her home, which is being considered a crime scene. Nanos noted Guthrie has limited mobility and couldn't walk 50 yards by herself. Nanos said, quote, "We make a plea to anyone who knows anything about this, who has seen something, heard something, to contact us." In a statement provided to USA Today, Savannah Guthrie, who was absent from the Today show on Monday, expressed her gratitude for the support. "On behalf of our family, I want to make sure or thank everyone for the thoughts, prayer, and messages of support." That is scary, and I feel for Savannah Guthrie. Yes, it's mainstream media on the Today show. That's true, but heart goes out for her on a human level. That's a scary thing when your 84-year-old mom or an 84-year-old parent with limited mobility is just snatched, according to authorities, just snatched from their home, and you're halfway across the country. That's scary stuff. Turning Point USA is launching a star-studded alternative to the Super Bowl halftime show, unveiling a patriotic concert it says will celebrate faith, family, and freedom. The event, titled the All-American Halftime Show, is scheduled to air around 8 p.m. Eastern Time on February 8th and will feature performances from artists including Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, and Gabby Barrett, according to the nonprofit organization. Kid Rock said in a statement, quote, "We're approaching this show like David and Goliath. Competing with the pro football machine and global pop superstar is almost impossible, or is it?" The concert will air opposite the NFL's official halftime show, headlined by Latin music star Bad Bunny, a selection that has sparked backlash from some conservatives. So that's the star list: Kid Rock, Brantley Gilbert, Lee Brice, and Gabby Barrett. Gabby Barrett. That is not a name I've heard for a while. I did some work for her. Technically, I think it was her dad. It's got to be about 15. No, it's been about 11, 12 years ago now. I was on this platform for creatives called Fiverr. I was doing voiceover work there. And she, it was probably her dad, reached out to me to perform a little thing for her, to pretend like I was a radio DJ and I was about to queue up. This was before she was even discovered. She had a big song, I think, a big single, couple, 2-3 years ago. That was pretty good. But that, I have not heard her name for quite a while. And now here's this. As you can tell, my voice is giving out, so this is probably going to be the last thing, with a very brief comment afterwards. John Kennedy, senator from Louisiana, joined the Will Cain show yesterday to talk about the SAVE Act in the Senate. He says there's light at the end of the tunnel.
But will it be part of this funding deal? Joining us now, Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy. Senator, good to see you. That seems common sense, but it has for a long time. That hasn't meant that it will pass. Voter ID. Will it be part of this funding bill?
Well, right now we find ourselves in the posture, as you know, Will, of having 5 appropriation bills and a continuing resolution to keep the Department of Homeland Security open. The Senate's already passed it. If the House doesn't pass it, a big portion of the federal government will be shut down. And that, in my judgment, would be top of the list, king of the hill, number one stupid. And it would be the Republicans' fault. Not only would it be bad policy, I support the SAVE Act, but if you add it on to the bill, and then the legislation, all of it has to come back to the Senate, and it doesn't pass the Senate, then we would have to go into a government shutdown, and Republicans would be blamed. Senator Thune has already promised us that he would bring up the SAVE bill separately, and that just seems to me to be the smart way to go.
If it came up separately, this has been a thing that's been lingering for a while, Senator. Could it pass a Republican House and a Republican Senate?
I think that most Republicans would vote for it. I would. Now, we've got a few free-range chickens on the Republican side. We may have to gather them up. The question will be which, if any, Democrats would vote for. I think we'd have to have some work to do there, but it's not insurmountable.
Well, I think it's safe to say the SAVE Act is screwed in the Senate. There is John Kennedy. And here's why. Usually John Kennedy has like 50 one-liners just ready to go for everything. For everything. Like everything. And they're all pretty funny, if we're going to be honest about it. But what he doesn't have ready most of the time is a voting record that people like you and I would probably appreciate. The reason why he has all of those one-liners is because of the other thing I told you about. His voting record's not that great, so he has to make up for it somewhere, and that's with all those quotable one-liners. The fact that he didn't have anything ready to go for that answer regarding the SAVE Act tells me that he hasn't even considered that this is something that can pass. Now, I hope to be wrong. I hope this standing filibuster, whatever the heck that people were talking about yesterday, we talked about today, I hope that's a real thing. I hope it's a real thing. Here's what's actually going to happen. I do believe John Thune will bring this before a vote in the Senate. It'll fail, thanks to the usual suspects on the Republican side. And it'll fail because they didn't nuke the filibuster. And then he'll say, and that's why you got to vote Republican this November so we can get 60 Republicans and we can pass stuff like the SAVE Act. Couldn't nuke the filibuster, but we can pass the SAVE Act. If you vote for us. That's the cynical play here. It's the most Republican thing. And then they won't do it. Even if they get to 60 votes in the Senate, they won't do it. Aaron, why do you tell people to vote then? Because we have to try. We have to try. I know that seems counterintuitive, but we're not allowed to give up. It could just be, this is just my cynical mind, I'm sorry. It could just be that maybe once they get to 60 votes in the Senate, maybe they will actually feel enough pressure because they'll be out of excuses at that point. We'll see. Anyway, that's going to do it for Tuesday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntyre, and this is the AM Update.